I'm gonna be showing the procedure to remove a radiator and to install a radiator on a 2000 Toyota Camry. This car is a 4-cylinder, and I think there are 6-cylinder. So if you got a 6-cylinder, then your radiator might be slightly different. And the procedure should be very similar for 1997 to 2001 Toyota Camry. Here's the new radiator. It's already been installed. It's right here. So I'm gonna just explain the procedure on how to remove it and how to put it back on. This is the old radiator. There's a crack right here. A crack here, so antifreeze coolant are starting to leak from here. So here's what I did first when I removed the old radiator. There was a shield cover right here, and I moved that out of the way. That was the first thing I did, and I haven't put it back on. This is that shield or cover I was talking about, and these are the bolts that hold this thing under the car. And the second thing I did was turn this, and just keep in mind this is the new radiator. I'm just explaining how I removed the old radiator. So I turn this to drain the antifreeze coolant. This might be hard. It might be stuck. So it'll be hard to turn, and then you might want to use a plier to turn it. But you want to be careful because this could break. This looks like it's hard on plastic, so when you turn this, fluid will drain out from here, and you pretend you're on this side, and pretend you're over here, and you're looking at it, and you want to turn it counterclockwise. You could use a plier similar to this to grab on it and then turn it, but be careful not to break the thing on the radiator. So next to this, there's a hose, and then there's a clamp. You could use a plier like this to grab on the clamp, squeeze to open it, and then move the clamp back here. And then you could this hose will probably be on it tight, so you might want to wiggle it back and forth to get it out. These were the tools I used to help myself get that hose out of the way. So when I moved this hose, the fluid that came out looks like they were transmission fluid. So I guess transmission fluid circulate into the radiator and back out to so the fluid doesn't get so hot. I could be wrong on this, but that's my assumption. You could use something like this. This is plastic. You could use it, open it up, and then clamp onto the hose. And then this thing right here, it'll lock the hose so the fluid doesn't drain out. If you don't have something like this, if you don't have that, fluid gonna eventually stop leaking from here. But after you finish the job, just don't forget to check the transmission fluid. And if you need to, then top off the transmission fluid. This thing here, you're gonna eventually need to get it out of here. So you could use this is about in the center of the radiator, the center of the bottom of the radiator. You could use a plier like this, squeeze on both sides, and then push it, and it should come out. And then here, this hose, I believe this hose is also from the transmission, because when I remove the hose here, transmission fluid leak out. And this hose is new. I bought this new. This clamp is also new. A new clamp. It's not the original. Here's the old hose. These look like they're the original clamp. There and there. This hose was too short when I tried to put it back onto the new radiator, so I went and bought a longer one. It was actually a lot longer, but I cut it. Cause with the original hose, the hose that was here, it couldn't reach far enough. It could only reach about down here, and then I wanted the hose to be further up that way, so it doesn't fall off. So I bought a longer one, and then I put this new clamp here. And on the other end, I also put a new clamp. Those two holes I was talking about, see, this is one of them, and that's the other one. And this is the one with the new hose. The one with, I guess, the original hose. And it looks like they do go to the transmission, because that's the transmission right there. Where my finger's pointing, that's the transmission. If you want to know for sure, 100% sure whether this hose and that hose right there go to the transmission, then I guess you gotta do research, but that's my assumption. So this is the hose I was just talking about. The next one to it, this is a connector. It have a connector, but I'll go over this in a little bit. This is the lower radiator hose. I changed this a while back, so this is not the original lower radiator hose, and I put a new clamp on it too, so this one's not original. If you got the clamp that came with the car, it probably look different from this. But what you gotta do is get the clamp out of the way and then push the hose out. When you get this hose out of the way, more anti-freeze is probably gonna leak. And then this connector, I wasn't able to get it out because I couldn't really see it that good from down here. I couldn't get it out until I got the radiator out of the car. So this connector, there's a wire here. The wire loop around the radiator. And it come here. It come from here to right here. So there's also a connector here. You gotta disconnect this connector. Once you disconnect this connector, you wanna disconnect this one too. This is a connector. This one goes to one of the fan. And then there's also a connector here. You gotta disconnect this connector. This connector goes to this fan here. This bottom connector, the bottom one here, it's kind of difficult to disconnect them. You gotta know what you're doing. There's a bolt here. You take this bolt out, this come right off. Take this bolt out, and this thing will come right off. Move the clamp here over there, pull this out. This hose is next to the radiator cap. This is the upper radiator hose. This hose is new. It's brand new. I put a new hose on it. Here's the old upper radiator hose. This one's old. I didn't want it to burst open while I'm driving, so I put a new one on. The clamp back here, it's not original. It's a new clamp, and this clamp is, I believe, it's the original. I just used the old one that was on the car. So after you do all that, you should be able to just lift the radiator out of the car. Once the radiator is out of the car, this connector will be a lot easier to remove. You get the connector out, and then you still gotta get this out too. When I got the connector out, I used this wrench to get this thing out. I think this is a sensor. I could be wrong, but I think it's a sensor to monitor the temperature on the anti-freeze coolant. But I didn't work on this until I already got the radiator out of the car. The new radiator, it came with 4 nuts. That nuts right there, and that's the 3rd one, and the 4th one. It came with 4. You gotta insert them in here, and it should click in, cause you need the nuts so the bolt could thread into the nuts. If your radiator didn't come with those nuts, you should be able to get the old nuts out from the old radiator. You should be able to use a flathead screwdriver and pry out these nuts. So I took the old fan. There's 1, There's two. I took them out of the old radiator and I put it onto the new radiator. So there was a fan here and another fan here. The bottom of the fan have a thing that go in here, and then the other side goes in here. And up here there's a bolt holding it, another bolt, and the fan on this side is just the same. Something on the bottom of the fan that go in here and here, and then a bolt and another bolt here to hold it onto the radiator. Here's another look at the old radiator. So that's the top side. This is the bottom. There was a round thing that goes in here and another round thing that goes in here. It's like a base. I put those two things onto the new radiator because those two things sits right on the bottom to help keep the radiator from moving. There's something I want to go over, because if you don't have much experience working on cars, then you might get confused. This thing right here with the connector, and then there's like a nut here, and just so you know where it's at, it's next to the lower radiator hose. So this thing here, when you take it out, so this is the old radiator. It was in here, I took it out and I put it onto the new one, the new radiator. But when I bought the new radiator, this thing, it was here. So if you don't know much about cars, then you're gonna be like, there's a thing here, how am I gonna put that? How am I gonna put that on, that nut in here, or that connector? You're gonna just have to move this, get out of the way, and then you put it in here. Cause this thing, it looks like a nut, but when you actually take it out, it's actually long, kind of long. It looks like it's a sensor. And when you put the radiator back on, when you put on the new radiator, everything will just be the reverse of removing it. I installed this radiator yesterday. I put a lot of miles in here onto this car today. Probably like maybe 40-50 miles. And doesn't look like there's any leaks, so it should be good. I don't really want to reconnect these connector, but just in case someone needs help, I'm gonna go ahead and show it. This is the bottom connector. So I did this before, so I kind of remember. If this was on the other side, then you might not see this, but it's facing this side so you can see it. Push on this. These are real hard. You might need to have you might need to use a plier or a screwdriver to help push this, because they are real stiff. Yeah, you gotta push here, and I'll put it back. I'll put it back on. Push this and then pull it out. If you're having a hard time removing this connector, you could take the radiator out first and then take this out. But in order to do this, like I mentioned earlier, this wire loop around the radiator and it goes to this connector. So you gotta take this, you gotta disconnect the wire from this connector here. Not this one, but the bottom one. When I was working on this car, I don't remember if this connector and this one, I don't remember if they were disconnect the same way, but as of right now they look the same, so I'm gonna assume they are disconnect the same way. So the way this works is you're supposed to push on this tab here and then you gotta pull it out because that thing's going down. But I could push it, but it's too tight and stiff, so it's hard to pull it apart. I might have to use this little flathead screwdriver and I'll push it down. Push this down and I'll pull it apart. It would be easier if there's two people. Okay, I got it out, but I wasn't able to. My hand was covering it. So the way I got this out is I pushed this. I used this little flathead screwdriver. I pushed this down, and then I pull it apart. But if you have someone helping you, one person could push and the other could pull it apart. And then the one on this side should be the same. But the one down here is different. The bottom here. I almost forgot to mention, I used the radiator cap on the old radiator. I put that radiator cap on the new radiator. I'm gonna get a new radiator cap soon though. I think the old radiator cap is near its useful life. My name is Welking and thank you for watching.